Hello, welcome back to the Underhand Free Throw. I am Simon, and today me and my co-host Ian are doing a short little series of videos in which we're going to talk about some teams that are sleeping giants, is what we're calling them. They're maybe a little bit better than their record says that they are, and we're going to talk about why that is and whether we should be taking these teams a little bit more seriously over the course of the rest of the season. Also, if you're just stumbling across this video and you never heard of us before, we upload fairly frequently. We try to do 2 or 3 times a week. We talk about the NBA as many channels do, but we try to take a step back and take a more long-term look at how teams are going, how the season is progressing, and how players are improving and teams are changing over time rather than talking about just the day-to-day goings on of the league. If you're interested in that sort of thing, please consider subscribing. So with that being said, the team we're going to talk about today is the Dallas Mavericks. Despite having a bit of a mediocre overall record, is this team secretly a sleeping giant? Let's talk about another team that is maybe a bit of a sleeping giant based on their ratings and such, but they have a couple of players that have also started out the season shooting really terribly, and we're hoping we'll bounce back. And that's the Dallas Mavericks. Currently about a 500 team, 8th in the Western Conference. Haven't been awesome, haven't been terrible. One thing that has been awesome for them has been their defense. They have been a very solid defensive team. But they're also just a very, very slow team. So some of that can kind of get a little skewed, I think, just because they're the slowest paced team in the NBA. They eat up a lot of clock on their possessions. They have a lot of slow developing possessions. I think Luka's post game that he's really leaned into this season is slowing down an already slow team even more. So yeah, what do you think about the Mavericks? You had them listed as a sleeping giant, so I'll let you take the floor here.
Yeah, currently the 14th best record, but according to net rating and SRS, they're like a borderline top 5 team in the NBA. So yeah, just by the numbers, they're like the second biggest sleeping giant in the league after the aforementioned Pelicans. I find like with them, it's even kind of more annoying because I keep hearing fans and reading fans being like, "What's wrong with the Mavericks?" Like because they're kind of hovering around 500 right now. It's just like it's pretty clearly that not much is wrong with the Mavericks. Like their offense could be better, but it's fine. Their defense is proving that last year wasn't a fluke. Like things, Christian Wood is not missing a whole lot of shots. Like Spencer Dinwiddie, I see fans being like, "Oh, they shouldn't let go of Jalen Brunson." I'm like, what was Jalen Brunson doing last year that Dinwiddie and Wood are not doing this year? Like Christian Wood is having a much more like efficient offensive season than Jalen Brunson ever did and people are just looking at that record and assuming something's wrong. But if you watch the Mavericks, like they're a really tough team to beat. They've had a pretty difficult early schedule to start things up, and they've still, won more than half their games. They're going to hit a soft part of their schedule soon, and they're going to look like a 50-win team again. Luka's, arguably the MVP of the league right now, or he's playing like he's like kind of like a top 3 player, so that's a really good thing for them. Finney Smith is not shooting it well, but he's has a pretty good track record as a shooter, not like a great shooter, but a solid shooter. Like I said, Dinwiddie and Wood are doing their job offensively. They've got a couple other shooters who are just ice cold, like Reggie Bullock's ice cold, Maxi Kleber's ice cold.
Luka.
Luka. Well, is Luka really cold at this point? I guess they're just like any track record of Luka, shooting threes in the NBA at a healthy clip. Like this is, it's a career low 3-point shooting, but it's not off the charts. He's gonna go one of these games. He's gonna go 7 for 12 from 3 and just hit a whole bunch of step backs, and all of a sudden he's going to be shooting 33% on the season, and that will be right around his career average. So it's hard to call Luka cold. He just takes ridiculous shots and will not be stopped.
I'm personally a believer in the idea that if Luka limited his 3-point shooting to just taking like catch and shoot threes created by other players that were wide open, he'd probably be like a 38% 3-point shooter, but he doesn't. He takes a lot of pull up, super deep step back threes and misses most of them. But I will say the one thing though is no matter how poor Lucas shoots, people his defender always guards his shot. Like no one's sagging off of Luka, which
Yeah.
in some ways, even though the shots aren't going in, it's kind of accomplishing the goal, which is you want your defender up on you if you're an attacking ball handling player, because that's what enables you to blow by them, or maybe in Luka's case, kind of bully and push and muscle his way past them into the paint for an easier shot. So, I mean, even though Luka's shooting poorly, it's not really having much of an impact on the way that he's being defended. The other thing I'll say about the Mavericks is they are playing really slow. Luka has kind of a ridiculous usage rate. We're talking like prime Harden Houston levels of usage where he just has the ball all the time when he's in the game and is doing everything. But I will say, like, this is the way that you need to play if you're a team constructed around a single star and a bunch of 3-and-D role players, and you really are just at a talent deficit against most of the other good teams you're playing. Like, you need to slow the pace down. You need to limit possessions. You need to allow your defense to really impact the game. So I think the Mavericks are playing the correct style given the personnel that they have. There's been a lot of debate over should the Mavericks switch up their style? Like, is Luka being used too much? And maybe that could be possibly true just in terms of like wear and tear and seeing how well he holds up throughout the season. But in terms of like how you maximize the value of a roster that's constructed like this is how you do it. I think that Jason Kidd's been doing a masterful job. So the real question with the Mavs, to me, comes down more to like roster construction and whether a trade can be made. But as far as playing with who they have right now, they're doing really the best that they can.
I don't think there's anything wrong with their roster construction. I think it's like, I think this team works really well. I think there are some roles that they could improve. Like the JaVale McGee signing really didn't work out. They could bring in it'd be cool if they could get a rim protector. That would be nice. It's just like, I'm not even talking about like, get Rudy Gobert in there. I'm just saying have one piece of their like 9-man rotation, 10-man rotation be offering a little bit more rim protection or be a little bit more of a vertical. Actually, no, I take that back. They got Dwight Powell for the whole vertical offensive threat. They're good for lobs. They don't need any more lobs than Dwight Powell. He's one of the better lob catchers in the NBA. I think that's just like a place they could shore up. I think Christian Wood. I think they could get a little bit more out of Dinwiddie and Wood. It does feel like they're kind of like restricted in their roles. I think when people talk about heliocentric Luka and Luka dominating the ball, I agree to an extent, but when you watch how the Dallas Mavericks offense works, it's nothing like the James Harden Houston system where they were going 5 out and basically he attacks. Clint Capella sets a screen for him. He looks for the lob and he looks for the right corner. Like the James Harden heliocentric offense was like started the same way every time, and it had 3 options. And then they had, they had counters that would come out of that. When you watch the Jason Kidd Mavericks offense around Luka, they play all kinds of wacky like pick and roll stuff. They set like 4 screens for him, and they're not, and they set a down screen for Dinwiddie on the weak side. Like their pick and roll offense is it's innovative, it's intricate. It's not just like get out of Luka's way and watch him work. They, depending on who's on the floor, like whether it's Wood or Kleber, or Dwight Powell, they change up all their pick and roll offense, but it's a very like heavy like team oriented pick and roll offense, and like the people who are setting those screens are very involved in it, kind of thing. And Luka is excellent at making reads out of that. If Luka got hurt and we see them, I think the offense would change, but they have a positive net rating with Luka off the floor. They mostly just kind of change into a more defensively rugged, kind of grinded out team. But like, again, like I think Dinwiddie and Wood are capable of generating just enough offense to help you scrape by with an elite defense. I'm not going to ask Christian Wood and Spencer Dinwiddie to be the pillars of a top 5 offense on their own, but I think that this team is like, I think those guys are in their right roles.
Yeah, I want to bring up one thing with you really quickly. So I think, the biggest issue with the Mavs offense beyond system and whether Luka should be using the ball or finishing the plays all the time, or whether they need any sort of innovation there. I think a larger and much more obvious issue has just been the lack of shooting consistency. So here's 4 guys on the Mavs who are playing a ton of minutes. Dorian Finney-Smith over 30 minutes a game. He's shooting, in the low 30s, below his career average. Tim Hardaway Jr., who I understand is coming off of a major injury last year and may take some more time to acclimate and adjust. He's playing 25 minutes a game. He can't hit anything, either outside the arc or inside the arc. He's been really struggling. Reggie Bullock is playing almost 30 minutes a game. He's below 30%. And Kleber as well, playing about 25 minutes a game. Can't finish anything, no matter where he's at on the floor. So I think a lot of improvement for the Mavs offensively will be almost expected, just because we know all of these players that are shooting so poorly are better than they've shown so far. Like, these are all guys who should be at least in the mid 30s, right? And all of them are below that right now.
Yeah.
One thing I will say though is one bright spot on the shooting side that we hadn't necessarily expected is Josh Green, much maligned for getting benched because he was such a poor shooter in the Western Conference Finals last year against the Warriors, has come out just absolutely on fire. He's got new shooting mechanics and he's hitting everything. So hopefully that keeps up.
He's barely missed a shot this year. Basically, he's hitting over half his threes and almost 80% of his 2-point shots.
Yeah,
which he almost still never takes, to be clear. Like, these are still a lot of like spot up shots, and he's still a very reluctant sort of. He's still a very non-aggressive scorer, but
that's true. But if they keep going in, eventually defenses are going to guard him more closely. And and once it's been established in a defensive coach's mind or a system, once people recognize
on the scouting report,
a guy can shoot, that generally doesn't change very fast. So even if Josh Green really falls down to earth and isn't hitting his 3-point shots anymore, once he's reached that level of this is someone the defense needs to respect, he's a floor spacer, right? And will probably continue to be one for a while unless things really start going poorly.
Yeah, I think Dallas fans are happy about Josh Green. More to your point about 3-point shooting, I think it's also worth pointing out that the Dallas Mavericks do take a lot of threes. They're a top 3 in 3-point rate, which means that if a couple players do, it's one thing when a team is not shooting a lot of threes and they're cold. And if they just started shooting better, it's it doesn't really matter. With the Mavs, if a couple guys start shooting better, that completely changes their offense. Because right now they're in the bottom 10 of the league for 3-point shooting percentage, and the top 3 of the league for the amount of threes they're taking, the percentage of possession.
It's really going to matter with the Mavs because they don't play. They only play close games, basically. Their biggest loss this year was a 9-point loss. They haven't had a double-digit loss. So, I mean, yes, they've lost a lot of games, but all of them have been really tight, close games that ended up in losses. So, yes, if their collective, low 30s shooting percentage as a team jumped up to 35, many of those losses would have been wins or will be in the future.
Yeah. So I want to kind of just really cement the Mavericks as well as the Pelicans that we were talking before, these teams could start playing worse or things could change. But right now, regardless of record, I think both the Pelicans and the Mavericks look like contenders. The way they're playing, the quality of basketball looks like that of a team that has a chance to win a championship in this, competitive 2023 season. Yeah,
I guess if you're running through the other teams in the West, I think it may be safe to rule the Clippers out as serious contenders unless Kawhi has some sort of miraculous recovery. With the Warriors, you're just hoping that they make it to the playoffs intact. I mean, they do have an elite starting lineup, even though Klay Thompson and Draymond Green have fallen off, even just from their last year selves. And then you're just like hoping that the veteran core can really come together. But at the same time, like the Golden State Warriors have like 6 or 7 good NBA players. And it's just really hard to win a title with a team that's that thin. But who knows? A trade could be in their future. But then otherwise, like you're relying on unproven teams. And I think, like, yes, the Mavericks made the Western Conference Finals last year with Luka, but just watching every single one of those role players just go ice cold in the Western Conference Finals, and then watching them like start out this season so poorly, shooting from three. That's the part that worries me. It's just where's the reliability? And that's why so few teams built around a single star with a solid cast of role players have won a title. It almost never happens. And it's just because role players are often go cold in the playoffs and just can't make a shot. Like this is not an uncommon occurrence.
I can't picture any of these teams beating Boston or Milwaukee.
No.
Or dare
unless
I
something
say
changes.
Cleveland. But I can picture any of them beating each other.
Yeah.
Like,
I guess that's fair.
I'm looking at, I think there's maybe 10 teams in the West that I could like picture making the conference finals as it stands right
Utah.
now. Which, okay, maybe 9.
Yeah.
I'm not a Utah believer.
Fair enough.
Not a Sacramento believer, even though I was a Sacramento believer at the beginning of the season. I just don't think they're gonna be a top. Their defense is as bad as anyone worried. So that's going to stop them from climbing the rankings too high, and I don't see a way for their defense to improve.